Who will win the Heisman Trophy? And what is the fallout after the college football playoff rankings? That and more tonight on the Footballguys College Football Show.
Welcome to the Footballguys College Football Show. Make sure you like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. Let us know, why is Jeff wrong? Why is Christian wrong? And also, and why am I right? That's what we're here for. We're diving right into the Heisman Trophy race and guys that have been kind of highlighted here. And it's a weird Heisman Trophy year. It doesn't really feel like there's been a dominant player in college football like we usually see in the past. What do you think about these guys? So here are the finalists for the award, and Jeff's going to talk about it a little bit, what he thinks. Caleb Williams, CJ Stroud, Stetson Bennett, Max Duggan, quarterbacks galore. What do we see here, Jeff?
First off, I think that I would be remiss if I did not mention that Hendon Hooker should be invited to New York, and I think Blake Corum should be invited to New York as well. I think both of those players were instrumental in the fabric of the college football story this year. Unfortunately, the Heisman Trophy Award is no longer really recognizing the best player in college football. It's turned into a infomercial for ESPN's College Football Playoff, and that's why you get the finalists that we get. Now, Caleb Williams is going to win this award. And yeah, he had a rough game on Friday night, and we'll dive into that a little bit more coming up. But he may as well have had the award on lock. And I think that that injury kind of showed the importance of that he has to USC. But I think that a good amount of voting had actually been in before that game on Friday night anyways. But the rest of the finalists, I mean, CJ Stroud's a name that we kind of expected to be there all year long. Stetson Bennett has no statistical case whatsoever, but he did play well for Georgia this year. And so I think that we can kind of probably cut out the Stetson Bennett jokes, but he's really there to plug Alabama, or to plug Georgia, the number one team in the college football ranking. And then Max Duggan had a fantastic gutty performance on Saturday we'll talk about as well, but he's there to also plug the TCU side. But again, I'd love to get back to this award being, if you were around in the 90s, you remember it really just being a focus on the best players that year, regardless of how the teams were out. And we've moved away from that now.
Yeah, it's kind of a bummer that Blake Corum didn't make it, and I know that it's become a quarterback award very intentionally and specifically, and like Jeff said, it ties into the college football playoff, and that's fine. Just make a different award, I guess, because this is now. I will say that what I think is the clear Heisman is sitting in this group. I think CJ Stroud for sure had a shot about a month and a half ago. I would say he was the very clear front runner, and he kind of lost the award. I don't actually think he has a chance to win it. I think this is going to come down to two players, because I think Duggan is there because of what he did over the last month or so. Duggan has been very good this year. We've talked about it quite a bit, so I don't want to hammer that home too much, but it's gonna. I don't think he has a shot either. He plays for TCU, and that's not how this award goes anymore either. And so I think it's coming down to Caleb Williams and Stetson Bennett. And like Jeff said, Stetson doesn't have any statistical reasoning to be here, even over a Hendon Hooker, who did, unfortunately tear his ACL, but had a really good year before that happened. And I don't know if that factored into him not being here. I don't know if Corum's injury factored into him not being here because he wasn't able to play against Ohio State, but I don't know. I don't know exactly what the criteria were and how Stetson Bennett met those criteria, in the words of Isaiah Thomas.
Yeah, so I'm going to take I think Bijan Robinson should have got invited. He had 1,500 yards rushing and 18 touchdowns. If you're talking about like a guy that is one of the best players in college football, I know it's like a team award, and I understand that Texas didn't maybe underachieved. The kid almost had 1,600 yards rushing and 18 touchdowns. Like, he should be over there over Stetson, in my opinion. And we can make Stetson Bennett jokes in the show. You don't listen to Jeff. Like, we can continue making those. Yes, he's played well and he's played fine, but I just feel like Bijan should be there, in my opinion. I think Corum should have been there. Someone kind of made a point that like, oh, well, Corum's not there because they saw what Edwards did against Ohio State. That's not. I don't know that. I don't understand that point of view. Like, Corum Corum and Edwards have been kind of doing this when both have been healthy anyway. Like there was really no drawback there. They're just very good running backs and very good offensive lines. I think Bijan should have been there. I think it's Caleb's award, right? We all pretty much think this is Caleb's award.
Yeah. And sorry, Jeff. I was just gonna say, and like Jeff said, a lot of the votes were in before that last performance, which wasn't even that bad. I mean, there was definitely moments in the first half that you would classify as Heisman moments had they won that game. But he already had about 25 Heisman moments the week before. Sorry, Jeff, go ahead.
No, I'm just going to say that Caleb Williams is about 70 yards away from setting the USC single season passing yardage record, and he's 3 touchdowns away from setting the school record for passing touchdowns. Whereas Bennett is almost half of his numbers. It's at least on the touchdowns, it's almost exactly half. And then yardage, Caleb's got him by about 1,000 yards or so. And it's just statistically, and I think when you really boil it down to the importance of the team, you can't undersell the importance of Caleb Williams to USC. They were a playoff team before he got hurt, and then that game turned sideways. Whereas Stetson Bennett, I think, is very important to Georgia, the fabric of Georgia, what he means as a leader on that team. But let's not pretend that Stetson Bennett goes out and they roll Carson Beck, whoever it might be, in there, and they're going to be still a very, very good football team.
Yeah. No, I agree completely with those. I mean, a shout out Max Duggan. Gritty performance. You know, he looked really good. And had they maybe won that game, we might have saw some votes go his way. Who do you think gets second here? CJ?
Stetson.
You think Stetson?
I think Stetson Bennett will get second because I think that when you look at it,
and Duggan third.
South is not going to vote for CJ Stroud. I don't think is probably where a lot, and they're going to hammer Stetson Bennett. I feel like.
And the odds actually indicate that. I don't know if you guys have checked out the odds, but Caleb's the clear favorite. Stetson's second. Duggan is third, and Stroud is I think he's plus 5,000 or something like that. So they do not think that CJ Stroud is going to win this award.
That's fair. I don't want to live in a world where Stetson Bennett is the second runner-up to Heisman. But hey, we're here. We're here now. Like, all right, let's talk about the games last week. So we're going to get into some spotlight recaps. Utah just shut the door on USC's season, 47-24. It was close in the first half. They pulled away, scored 23 points in that fourth quarter. Cameron Rising looked good. He threw for 3 touchdowns, 300 yards. Jaquindon Jackson came in off that, had 13 carries, 105 yards, 2 touchdowns. They looked really good. And the thing I think I highlighted, we talked about, was like, hey, Cameron's kind of hurt. I don't know if they're going to run with him. Well, they didn't need to because they ran with Jaquindon Jackson, so it didn't matter. And USC's defense couldn't stop anybody. Those big plays they gave up were backbreakers on that defensive side. Caleb got hurt. He looked good, 360 yards, 3 touchdowns. This was a pretty bad performance, but we're used to seeing this out of our guy, Lincoln Riley. Huh, Jeff?
It's not a surprise given that it is a Lincoln Riley team. I think all year long they had been living on the turnovers, and then they ran into a team. Utah's a bad matchup, and Utah's the best team in the Pac-12. And I know that they had the loss to Florida. That was a very close game, and they had a couple other losses. Utah, this is not an accident that or not really even a shocker that Utah won this game. They beat USC once already, and they're really a recipe for a nightmare for USC because they can run the football on anybody. Morgan Scalley was able to dial up the blitzes. He's a very creative defensive coordinator. And as soon as Caleb Williams became a setting duck on that hamstring pull on that long run, they knew that they had him dead in the rights. And once that happened, they beat them 44-10 over the last 3 quarters. And I think that I told you guys after this was exactly Ohio State, Michigan. It felt like watching this on Friday night, watching this 6 days after that game where USC has the offense and they are out and they've got control early in the game. And then Utah just wears them down with physicality. And that's going to be a problem. And, USC's got one more year in the Pac-12, but it kind of sounds like as much as they can, Utah is loading up maybe to come back because I think Rising still can come back. Can he not?
He's got a COVID year.
Yeah. Because it sounds like he's going to be interested in being back, and Kyle Whittington, we know he's going to be there. So what they've built there is just fantastic at Utah. And when you look at really over his tenure, because he inherited that great team from Urban Meyer and rolled the program forward, he made the step up to the Pac-12 and created and was able to build that depth and rebuild that team because they really struggled at first. They were a powerhouse team in the Mountain West, and then they struggled those first couple of years in the Pac-12. But once he got it rolling, I mean, that's a fantastic program that is just, I think nationally it doesn't get the recognition that they really deserve. Part of that's the Pac-12, part of that's the window that they play in, but part of it's they don't play in a particularly flashy brand of football. They just play a very effective brand of football.
Yeah. I want to give you credit too, Jeff, for posing the question last week of if Caleb Williams is too out of structure. And I think what we saw was the very clear answer to that is yes. When you put him inside structure, he struggled a bit in that second half. Now, of course, like you said, it was down to the hamstring injury, and there was a reason that he was in structure. But even in the first half, there were times where Utah would rush their edges up the field very, very deep to the point that Caleb couldn't bail out of the back of pockets, which is how he traditionally likes to get out and make plays. He's not a run first scrambling quarterback. He likes to get out to his right, to his left, and make some plays. And when they kind of took that away and he started running, and that actually ended up being the reason that he got hurt is on a long run. And I think that really made him uncomfortable. I think, like you said, Utah has the ability to potentially turn around and make him uncomfortable again next year. Utah is a very intriguing team moving forward. If Rising doesn't come back, Jaquindon Jackson was a quarterback recruit, and I mean, they used him at running back in this game at points, and so if Rising doesn't come back, I think he kind of takes over the mantle at quarterback, and that's a whole different element to their game. If not, I mean, he's transitioned fully to running back. They're losing Tavion Thomas, and I don't know that it's going to matter because Jackson is fantastic. And then on the other side of the ball, I think there's a chance that Clark Phillips doesn't declare for the draft. I don't know what kind of grades he's going to get, and that would be massive for that defense as well. So I like Utah. We talked about it after the Florida loss in week 1, and I said, hey, I don't think we've seen the last of this Utah team. And then I never talked about them for the next 10 weeks, 11 weeks. And then they came back around and ended up the Pac-12 champions, which I think who are they getting in the bowl game? Why am I blanking on
State
that?
Rose Bowl.
Yeah, I find that to be a very intriguing game where those two teams play a very similar style of football and win in similar ways. So shout out Utah.
No, I think that game's going to be the top on my list in terms of outside of the college football playoff. Like, yeah, Utah's got to get some wide receivers though. Like Utah's got to get in the transfer portal. They got to get something there. I do want to highlight like USC couldn't run the ball in this game. Austin Jones did not have a good game. And I think that was kind of a key. They stopped that rushing attack and made him one-dimensional. And also, like, shout out to USC though for getting to this point. Like that, what they had with Clay Helton, and now like it's light and day. But this is what's good. We need a good USC team, and just to be competing, be there. Like people can, say what they want about him, but they have a pretty good class coming in. Zachariah Branch, wide receiver, 5-star kid from Bishop Gorman out there in Vegas. He's really good. And that's a name for everybody to know. Like he's going to come in and he's like Tyreek Hill in that offense. Just wait, 5'10", 172. I bet you they unleash him, especially with Addison leaving, those other guys. I'm sure they'll be on some guys in the portal. And in running backs, they got Quentin Joyner coming. He's 11th ranked running back. He recruited very well. And he got some linemen. And when you're looking at what he did, I think Lincoln knows he's got to build up front to battle Utah. So this recruiting class that he has coming in is the battle Utah. He knows that now. And I think he wasn't ready this year. I don't think that team was ready. I don't think necessarily they're built for Utah, but they're going to be built for Utah next year, in my opinion.
Yeah, I just want to. Are we sure USC is a good football team? It's kind of, I think, or is it just really Caleb Williams, the Heisman Trophy winner and the best player in college football? But I do think that there's going to be a level of being the Pied Piper on that, where you're going to have these guys, especially receivers, that are going to say, "Well, I can play with Caleb in Los Angeles for a year, and he's going to up my draft stock, and we're going to win the Pac-12, and let's go and let's do it." But let's not pretend that this exact thing wouldn't have. Probably even worse, wouldn't have happened against Georgia. I mean, Georgia would have curb stomped this team.
For sure. I think it's worth asking if they're a good overall football team, but it's tough to deny how good that offense was when it was firing and when Caleb was healthy, obviously. And I mean, they did a lot of their damage throughout the year without Jordan Addison. He missed a few games in there. Mario Williams missed a few games. So they kind of made it work. And I think to Caleb's credit, yes, but Lincoln Riley puts together, it's a fake offense, but we've now seen what happens when those fake offenses work that way in college. They get moved into the NFL. And so I think it's kind of like a revolutionary college offense that obviously it takes an elite quarterback, but that's what every NFL team is looking for. So shout out Riley for implementing that. I also think, like you said, people are going to say, I want to go play with Caleb. Jordan Addison already did that. He literally said, oh, Keaton Slovis, no thank you. I'm going to go play with Caleb Williams. And he did boost his draft stock, and, he's going to make a lot more money because of it.
Yeah. All right. We're done with this game? Move on to the next one. All right,
Sure.
next big game. I had a lot of fun watching this game. This is my favorite game this last week. Kansas State beats TCU in overtime. Shout out to Kansas State. They really are a good football team. We talked about that. Beating TCU, the team of destiny. Didn't really affect them much. We'll talk about them in a little bit. Big takeaways from this game. I mean, Max Duggan played pretty well in the second half. He struggled, though, kind of consistency, 18 for 36. Kendra Miller didn't really get going, 82 yards. Duggan had 110 yards rushing. Quentin Johnson had 4 catches, 139 yards, but he had some mistakes. He had some drops. He had a turnover, a fumble. On the flip side, Kansas State, Will Howard looked really good. We've talked about him. Deuce Vaughn at 130 yards. I mean, they competed. Like, this was a very close game. Both these teams are very similar in kind of how they built their roster, what they look like. What was your takeaways, Jeff?
I think it's, congratulations to Kansas State playing a fantastic game. And I kind of I was on Kansas State coming into this, and I kind of said that I think had they not lost Adrian Martinez and Howard in that first game, I think that they probably they were on pace to really pull away from TCU the way that first game was going. And then they had the true freshman quarterback come in after those two guys were both injured in that game, and they really struggled in the second half. And so having Howard through the whole game, allowed to go in, hats off to TCU too, because that it would have been very easy, I think, for them to roll over. And, they were down 11 at one point in the fourth quarter, and then to make that comeback. And, that's really the encapsulation of this team is they've been a comeback team all year long. And so it'll be an interesting matchup moving forward. And we'll talk about that game ad nauseum, I'm sure, but Michigan's also a second half team. And so I think you got a scenario there where both teams are very comfortable, regardless of what happens in the first half, that they've been battle tested and played through that. Hats off to Max Duggan. I mean, that was a player coming into this year that we weren't even sure if he was going to be the starting quarterback for TCU. And he really is the heart and soul of that team. And he brings a physicality. And this team reminds me to go back way back in the Ohio State machine, the 2002 Ohio State Buckeyes, where, Craig Krenzel at quarterback, and he's not a flashy quarterback, but he's able to move the chains and really became the heart and soul of that team. And if you remember back the Miami National Championship game, he ran for 70 or 80 yards in that game, and it was real surprising. I think Duggan brings that element on the ground, but he's not a dual threat traditional quarterback. He's more of that battering ram, that Tim Tebow type quarterback that will punish you. But then they have, obviously with Quentin Johnson and Kendra Miller, players that can make those big plays too. And so it'll be an interesting to see, because this is another team, much like USC, where they really feel like they're a year ahead of schedule now, getting through and running through the Big 12, and the way, especially the way they did, with so much of those games being down to the wire, and them showing so much heart and resilience. And really, I think in this game, the big takeaway was I think they earned that number 3 line just from having that comeback and getting it into overtime. Had they allowed Kansas State to maybe extend that 11-point lead and go up 18, whatever it might have ended up being, I think that then you'd have them as the 4 seed.
Yeah. First, I don't remember the Miami National Championship game because I was like 5 years old, Jeff. I don't remember anything from that game. I remember watching it, but no, like you said, hats off to Duggan too. So Duggan, if you didn't catch it after the game, very emotional. TCU desperately wanted a championship this year, and they're not going to get one. Like we know that they're not going to win the national championship. And so he was very emotional, but I also felt like he thought he lost his opportunity to play in the college football playoff, or he lost his teammates' opportunity, because he is a very good leader. I'm excited to see what happens with Duggan. He's got another year or two of eligibility. I think TCU could run it back with some of these guys. They're losing a couple wide receivers, but they have a lot of talent in that wide receiver room. Okay. And in Sonny Dykes' first year, it looks like it doesn't matter who's at wide receiver, to be completely honest. They didn't use Quentin Johnston for the first 4 weeks, and it didn't matter. They were still firing very, very well offensively. So, but yeah, Kansas State won this game. I think there's an argument to be made that TCU did not deserve that 3 spot, because had Adrian Martinez and Will Howard played in that first game, we're looking at a 2-loss TCU team probably. But they didn't, and that's such a hypothetical that you can't kind of go back and say that. So good for them. They earned that spot. They earned that number 3 seed. And it was a team of destiny. Unfortunately, they're not going to reach the promised land here at the end, I don't think. But yeah, I mean, these two programs are in really good spots moving forward.
I just like to point out in the 2002 national title game, the refs got the ring too for gifting Ohio State the championship, but Jeff never points that out. The guy that I would like you to know about for TCU is Jordan Hudson. I think he's the next wide receiver on that roster. He's really good. He got a pass interference, so he got his touchdown waved away. But I think he could be that guy coming forward. So if you guys out there in Debbie and fantasy or whatever, like Jordan Hudson's very good, and I think that he's going on the radar somewhat in some like in the shallower leagues that you have. Like you could go probably get Jordan Hudson. Like he's gonna be a threat next year. But it's really hard for me because I love TCU. They're my team, but now they're playing my real team, and now it's they have to crash and burn. All right, let's jump over to the college football leagues and kind of talk about the top 10 and what we got. So rounding out the playoff, we have Georgia at 1, Michigan at 2, TCU at 3, Ohio State at 4. So those are your playoff teams. On the outside, Jeff's favorite team, Alabama. He was stumping hard for them. They could not get in, though. Saban tried everything he could. They're at 5. Tennessee's at 6. Clemson's at 7. Dabo's kicking himself because if he would have just made the QB change, he'd probably be in the playoff. Utah at 8, Kansas State, USC, Penn State, Washington, Florida State, and Oregon State. Shout out Florida State and Oregon State getting in those at the end of that numbers. They had a very good season. Jeff probably wants to yell about TCU being 3. What is your opinion on TCU being 3, Jeff?
My opinion is that I think Michigan should have been the number 1 seed. And I think the performance on the field over the last couple of weeks indicate that they should have been the number 1 seed. And I think that they were treated as the number 1 seed by getting TCU and avoiding that Ohio State rematch. That now I think that they probably Atlanta versus Phoenix, it's probably 6 to 1, half dozen another for Michigan traveling. But I do think that matchup, and you see that first line come out where Georgia is a 6.5 point favorite against Ohio State, while Michigan is a 9.5 point favorite against TCU. I think that it's essentially the committee probably did the best job that they have done in years, but it was kind of handed to them. I think this year more than most years but I do think that Michigan was treated de facto as the number 1 seed, getting that matchup with TCU, and they were able to, kind of under the guise of TCU earning that spot versus thinking that TCU is the better team. And 1 point here, Alabama was a TV mirage. Alabama was completely created out of thin air on Friday night. As soon as TV knew that they did not have an argument between TCU and Ohio State to lean back on with USC gliding in, they said, who do we need to talk about all day on Saturday? And it was Alabama. And I do want to say, like, Fox, I don't know what you're doing, Fox, because, you have a lot of money invested in the Big 10 and the Big 12. So what, I guess maybe ratings, but it feels incredibly short-sighted and just really poor business, given where you've got money invested, to have Alabama's coach come on at halftime of the Big Ten championship game and stump for his team's inclusion over one of your partner conferences. That made no sense to me at all. Nick Saban's case was essentially, we're Alabama and we'd be favored whoever we're playing because we're Alabama. And if that's the case, Nick, then let's just cancel the season already and let's get on it. We can just go off recruiting rankings. We can talk to Vegas and say, look at these recruiting rankings. Who do you think is going to be the top 4? And boom, all right, let's go. That we'll have just Michigan, Georgia, Ohio State, and Alabama can play every year, and we can have our own little playoffs. And I was a little bit surprised that I don't know, Alabama was a mirage the entire way, but with that sitting there for TV, that would have been ratings bonanza. But again, I do want to emphasize that TCU earned their spot because and I think really having that undefeated, that 12-0 season, moving into that conference championship game and not giving up in that game and fighting back and getting that thing to overtime, I think really clinched them into that number 3 spot. But the idea that there was any sort of drama on who was going to be included in this is just asinine.
Yeah. Here's the thing. Friday or Saturday morning when I woke up, because I actually missed the end of the USC Utah game and had no idea what happened, had to rewatch it. When I woke up, I said, okay, I can get on board with an Alabama, Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State playoff. You know why? Because, like I said, with TCU, we know what their fate is already. And that's the unfortunate part. And that's the part about the college football playoff. Yes, that team earned it. TCU absolutely earned a spot in the playoff. They earned a chance to go get their butts kicked by a much better program with much better athletes. I'm going to look like an idiot if TCU wins, by the way, because I'm hammering so hard on this, but it's true. I think the argument that would Alabama be favored in all of these games outside of maybe a matchup against Georgia? Yeah, I think that is true. But is that Vegas just understanding what Alabama is and not really putting into perspective what they actually were this year? That could be. So, but yeah, I think TCU earned the 3 spot. I think the unwillingness to jump at an Ohio State Michigan rematch and guarantee that you get those ratings was shocking. I actually did think that they would put Ohio State 3 in order to guarantee that that's the matchup that they got, because I find it hard to see a world in which Ohio State beats Georgia in general. I think there are a lot of different discussions that we can go into for that, and we don't have time to do that tonight. That's definitely down the road. But I find it hard to believe that Georgia won't be playing for a national title at this point. And so to kind of ignore what that would mean for A, the sport of college football, and B, just their own monetary reasons, I was shocked. I'm pleasantly shocked because, like I said, TCU earned that. But Alabama snubbed. Saban snubbed. They deserved it.
I think
it's going to be well, it's going to be amazing because Saban insinuated during that halftime talk, whatever that ended up being, that TCU had a terrible loss against a bad team, and now Nick Saban is going to be playing that terrible lost bad team in the bowl game. That I'm sure after Alabama gets their butts kicked by Kansas State, they'll just claim that they didn't want to be there in the first place, and they'll probably just invalidate that when they probably won't even have it on Alabama's record books moving forward. I know that Alabama gets a little bit creative with their record books from time to time, so I'm sure that they'll probably just say we didn't want to be in this game moving forward. But yeah,
that was the old Utah game. Remember when they got their butts kicked by Utah?
Yeah, that was no, I don't remember. No, that game never happened.
Yeah. No, I think you guys are right. I argued for a couple of weeks that Michigan should be 1, and I got just blasted on Twitter sphere because you guys are just idiots and you don't look at the games. I thought Michigan. I think this could have easily been Michigan 1, TCU 4, Ohio State and Georgia 2 and 3, and it would have had been the same matchups. That's what I thought. Like, and that's not even me being a homer. Like, but I get it. I understand. Like, it is what it is. Alabama, you beat Texas. That's it. That's your biggest win. I don't want to hear anything because you guys didn't beat anybody else, really. Like, that's your best win.
And wouldn't have had Quinn Ewers not gotten hurt.
And Quinn Ewers isn't that good. So, well, he hasn't been. Let's put a caveat out there. Okay, I don't want you to clipping that and yelling at me, but I think that's the reality of it. But I think it's great. I mean, I think that this is the best 4 teams. You know, Ohio State got in, they deserved it. They only lost once to Michigan. Like, if I was on the flip end of that, if Ohio State would have beat Michigan, I would have said the same thing. Hey, we deserve to get in there if that's the case. Like, I just think Georgia is very, very good, and Georgia plays up for good opponents, and that's what's scary is they really play down for bad opponents, and you saw that in the Vanderbilt games and stuff we've talked about. Missouri, remember, they should have lost that game, and now, but when they play up, man, they looked almost unbeatable in every game that they play in a big game.
Yep.
Well,
sorry,
but
Jeff.
I think I mean, you look at the favorites though this year, and I think that this year probably, I mean, we would have been fine going back to the old BCS model and just have Georgia play Michigan, and I feel like people wouldn't even be upset in the slightest at that, because being in Ohio State, I don't know, I don't feel like Ohio State earned their inclusion into the field. I think that Ohio State was clearly there by default. Had they looked a little bit more impressive that last month, you know, maybe I'd be saying that they earned it, and had Michigan that game not gotten away the way that it did, and you know, those 2 long touchdown runs by Donovan Edwards, then maybe I think they would deserve a rematch. But now I like the position that they're in because they would have to beat Georgia anyways, and if they do get that Michigan rematch, they're going to earn it either way. And I do think that on the point of TV, this might actually be better for TV, because I think that had you had that early game, had that been TCU, Georgia, and everybody's kind of feeling like, well, like, we know TCU is the cute little cream puff story and they're going to get hammered by Georgia. And had that happen, you'd have everybody checking out. And yes, you have the hammer of Ohio State, Michigan, but I think Ohio State, Georgia is probably going to pop a number too. I would expect that that's going to be okay. And then you're waiting with the bottom matchup where you've got Michigan, that they're either going to get the rematch with Georgia or they're going to get the rematch with Ohio State, either way, waiting in the national championship game. So I think either way there, you're drawing a number there. So I think TV is going to be quite okay with this matchup.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Quickly, you mentioned going back to the old BCS model. There's been a lot of debate about this 12-team playoff, because that was news that we haven't talked about on here. That is officially going to happen in 2024. So USC joins the Big Ten, and then we're in a 12-team playoff. There's been a lot of discussion about if that makes sense with the current status of college football, right? With Georgia's dominance, Alabama dominating most years, Ohio State, Michigan, we have our teams at the top. What I guess, Kevin, we've talked about this before, but do you understand the argument that there's not enough to put teams into the 4-team playoff? So why would the 12-team playoff be better? Or are you just all in on the 12-team because of the fun upsets?
I don't know if there's going to be that many upsets, but I think that, like we just talked about earlier in the show, teams are going to get better because of NIL. So I don't necessarily agree that these games not going to matter and these teams, we don't have enough. Now 12 is a little much. I think they had to do 12 though, because that's the only way conferences were going to approve it, right? Because they had to get unanimous approval. But I think it's going to be great for college football. I would have loved 8. I've always been an 8 guy. Hey, just the 2 top teams get to bye. That's just how they do it. But 12 is whatever. But I think that talent's going to be up there. I actually do think talent is going to be up there for these guys to be able to have we're going to have some fun games, right? And especially I hope that they don't screw this up. I hope the first rounds are all at home, the first 2 rounds. And then we go back to this, the final 4 being wherever they want to be. But that home environment is going to be awesome for college football. And that's what this is about. When we talk about college football, we're purists, right? We love the environment and all that kind of stuff. And now we can maybe create some new rivalries, right? Maybe some college football playoff rivalries, these people facing each other and stuff. I think it just is good for the pageantry of college football. And it's going to be nice because we're going to get better regular season games, because these teams are not going to be scared to freaking play each other now. And we won't have to maybe see Alabama play FCS, Alabama State, Georgia Southern, all these schools, because it doesn't matter anymore. Now you're going to get in. So let's roll and let's see how you are. And I love it because the Big Ten and the SEC now, we're going to see a lot of those teams. And that's going to be super conferences. That's going to be awesome, because I do not want to see, Miami. They're not going to make it anyway. We're going to see finally some real talent here. I think it's going to be battle.
Yeah, and I think one of the key points you hit on there is the regular season matchups, because right now the way college football is playing out is you've got a great opening weekend with some big primetime games that kind of flow through multiple nights, and then you get to week 2 and it's Penn State against Auburn, college game day, and you're like, what is this? And it happens quick, and it happens overnight, and so those week 2 and week 3 has been complete garbage over the last handful of years, because they're shoving all the good ones into week 1, and then it's just a major letdown. So having more of that model, and I think that really where to look at this is the NCAA tournament, and you're just turning it. It's not better, it's not worse, it's just a different sport. And if you're going to get, I think TV is playing into it. TV doesn't want Ohio State playing Arkansas State, they want Ohio State playing Georgia. And so I think that plays into it to some extent, but upsets early are going to happen, but it's going to be like a 12 beating a 5, which I think the number 12 team in America beats the number 5 team in America fairly regularly. But then what you're going to get, and what the joy of the NCAA tournament is, the opening is all about the upsets, and you're talking about Cinderella, and you're talking about that making through. But when you get down to it, when you get down to the Final Four, you still want Duke, North Carolina, UCLA, Michigan in your Final Four. And that's what happens in college basketball. And I think that you're going to see a lot of that in college football, where, yeah, you're going to have a 12 is going to beat a 5. That's going to happen. But moving forward, you're still going to get your Michigan, Georgia in the championship game. And yeah, you might get an occasional upset, but the idea that a 12 seed is going to run through this bracket, that's pretty unrealistic, but I'm okay with it. It's just a different sport. And I don't know, it's different, not necessarily better or worse, but as somebody that's been a college football fan for a long time, especially if you go back to the BCS era, if you don't go back to the BCS era, there's so much gravity behind losses, but back in that era, a loss, you're done.
Yeah.
Like, forget about it. You need like a miracle to be playing for the championship if you were to lose a game in that era. And so we've kind of lost a little bit of that already. And to pretend that we're not going to have arguments about who should be the 4 versus 5 to get that bye, or who should be the 12, like, we're still going to have plenty of arguments around in college football.
Yeah, and the other element, quickly, I'm so sorry, that I think could be in play is, in the NFL, we see teams get hot at the right time, right? The Bengals last year. I think we could see little runs, and when you take a look at the rankings this year, I mean, USC is sitting, what, at 10? Is that what their number is? They're sitting at the 10th ranked team.
Mm-hmm.
Could we honestly say that they couldn't make a run at one of those top 4 teams? We were talking about them as a playoff team a week ago.
Yeah.
And so I think what's going to happen is those conference championships are going to have more weight. And then you're going to see some of those teams falling out. And I think it's going to make for better football across the board.
I think it is too. And if you're complaining about more football, then I don't like you. All right, let's go over to notable draft declarations. We're going to just talk about some of these really quick. So 3 guys you got to know: Anthony Richardson, Devin Achane, and Jackson Smith-Njigba all declared for the draft. I think the biggest shock was Anthony Richardson. The other 2 we kind of projected. No one wants to play at Texas A&M, as you see in the transfer portal. JSN, we've kind of figured that one. Anthony Richardson, I think, is the key. What do we think, Jeff? What is Anthony Richardson to you?
Anthony Richardson is a very mobile quarterback that has a package that you would really like for fantasy football. And it's like throwing darts blind, because you don't know if, and really at the early, and I don't know, I feel like I'm snake bit from the Malik Willis and from the Desmond Ridder fallout last year, where, I was somebody that I talked myself in as quarterback hungry as the NFL is. Somebody's going to take a chance on these guys in the first round because there's so much tools and into the package. I'm skeptical that teams are really looking for that, but I do think the quarterback landscape has changed at the NFL level even this past year, between players aging out and players that, I don't think Zach Wilson is exactly the Jets' plan moving forward, some things like that. But it'll be interesting to see, because if we're in a lot of where our content's going to be driven, and what we're going to try to do for you is to help you out in those early drafts before, because once you kind of get to the NFL draft, then consensus really sets into your rookie drafts, and you're just kind of, you might have a little movement here or there, but early drafts can be wild, and we saw Malik Willis was going 101 in some drafts, and then after the draft, he's a mid-second round pick. And so Richardson is going to be that guy this year, that I think that as the shine is off the 23 class a little bit, you're going to get people that talk themselves into him being a top 6 pick in Superflex leagues early because of that package. And you're already a little bit seeing it out there already. But the idea is very real that he could be a late day 3 pick, or day 2 pick, I mean.
Yeah, I think that the early declaration here means that he got a first round grade, and someone said, "You're going in the first round, man." I think there's a difference between Malik Willis, who I was very, very critical of last year. I want to point out, like, I thought that he struggled to see the field in a way that was not correctable and not worth the risk. Anthony Richardson, I think, sees the field well for the most part. I think that he can be a little erratic with his throwing, and I think a lot of that can be toned down with his mechanics. And that's why when we look at this massive dude that runs as fast as he does, probably going to come out with a relative athletic score of 10 flat, I think we're going to see him go pretty high in the draft. And so from a fantasy football perspective, I still don't know what to do with it, because draft capital, sure, it matters until we have Zach Wilson. And until we don't have a quarterback, we have a dead asset immediately in a dynasty league if this player doesn't pan out. You have 1 or 2 years, you can make that distinction at that point. But I think that there's a world in which Anthony Richardson does not clean up those things and is not a good NFL quarterback. The upside is too crazy, and I think this quarterback class is too thin for someone to not jump at the opportunity to take him. And I would say in the top 20 is where I'm guessing at this point.
What's crazy about Richardson, and as I've kind of gone into him, I'm starting to do the off-season content. He has 2 games in the season where he threw for at least 400 yards, and he showed that upside. We saw it, like, oh, wow, there's talent. He also has 4 games where he registered a completion percentage under 50%, including against Florida State, where he had 33% completion percentage. That is the problem. That is what I highlight, though, if he goes to Brian DeBall, he goes to some of these places, like when you talk about coaching staffs, and yeah, his landing spot matters. Like draft capital, obviously, and that's just a cop out. Everybody says it. Who's he going to get coached by? That's what I want to know. Like if he gets a good staff, I'd be very comfortable drafting him. If he doesn't get a good staff, I'm not going to be comfortable drafting him.
Well, it really plays into, yeah, exactly right. Who can use what he can do, and if a team can, if this guy is on the field, he is a fantasy quarterback 1. If he is on the field, and it's just going to be that question of, is he able to get on the field, and is he able to get with a coach that is able to lean into his strengths, accentuate his strengths, and minimize those weaknesses enough to make him playable.
Anything else, JSN, Devin?
Stop questioning Jackson Smith and Jigba's heart in this scenario. I did it at first. These kids have to think about what's best for them. If it's a hamstring injury that lingers into his NFL career, then he's losing a lot of money. So even if he is opting out, and it's probably the best move. I just don't get letting Georgia know that that's what you're doing. Like, make them think that you're playing. I don't understand that, but whatever.
Well, all weekend long on Twitter, it was like he was acting like he was playing, and then the moment that Ohio State got in the field, he announced that he was out. So I think that there was a fair amount of let's plant that seed in the committee that, maybe you're going to see the complete Ohio State team. Just let us in, and then as soon as he's out, but there was a recurrence of that injury, and he had that hamstring injury early, and then he was back. He played in the Toledo game, but he didn't play a lot in the Toledo game, and I think he might have played maybe against Iowa, somebody else, but he re-injured himself, I'm pretty certain, and that was kind of the whispers around, and I kind of, once that re-injury happened, I think that was kind of the moment that he decided that this is done.
I'm going to tell you right now, based on the talk that I've seen from just people in fantasy, JSN is going to be a freaking value, and I love it. And I love it because we do this every year, and you know what? If you're watching Football Guys, if you listen to our content, you're going to love it too, because we're going to highlight some things that he does well, and people are going to overthink it. They're not going to draft this kid, and he's going to slip to the middle into the first. I mean, I know the receiver position is kind of iffy right now, but there are some names that are getting thrown above him. Rashee Rice. Are you kidding me right now? I like Rashee Rice. Christian talks about Rashee Rice. We think he's fine. He is not JSN. JSN was one of the best wide receivers in college football last year, guys. And I don't know what we're doing here. We're overthinking this one too much. And I love it because I'm going to just benefit from it. And so are you, listeners out there. You're just going to benefit from it.
Well, his game translates perfectly to scoring fantasy points. So the way that he was used at Ohio State, get the ball in his hands, allow him to create after the catch. And you got people out there questioning his athleticism, questioning if he can win outside. I don't know, to some extent. Can Amon-Ra St. Brown win outside? I mean, yeah, kind of, but at the same time, he's still a top 12 dynasty wide receiver right now here in his second year. And JSN's game, like, as much as you want the big guys, the fast guys that can stretch the field and do all those things, I want a guy that's going to score a lot of fantasy points, and that's going to be Jackson Smith-Njigba.
Yeah, and Christian just did a video on it. You guys can go check that out too. All right, let's talk about notable returns really fast, and then we'll get into our games. I think Kayshon Boutte being number one, guys. He came back. LSU wide receivers kind of had a down year. We've kind of pegged him as being that late first value. He came back. Michael Penix Jr., quarterback for Washington. Apparently, he got like $5 million in NIL. I would have came back too. Jaheim Bell coming back to school, just transferring. And did you see Bell? He released shirts for South Carolina in the morning, sold them, and then announced he was transferring later. That is marketing 101 right there. What do we think about Kayshon, Christian? Are you surprised he came back?
Yeah. Yeah, very, especially with the early incidents with Kelly when that all went down. I obviously that relationship is very mended, and I think Boutte put some nice performances on the field down the stretch. Now, it took him a while to get there, and I think that he probably didn't get the draft grade that he thought he was going to get. We talk about overthinking with JSN. I don't think there's much overthinking with Boutte. For the first few weeks of the season, he was pretty bad, and so I think he was probably getting day 2 grades, and he thinks he's a 1, and I think he's right. When all is said and done, if he's able to put it together, what I want to know is who is playing quarterback for them, because they need a quarterback. Nussmeier did some nice things. That can't be the solution, though. There are going to be too many guys in the portal. Devin Leary comes to mind as a guy that fits what they want to do offensively, and it is in the portal right now. So, but I mean, really, what he's risking is going back to school, and Malik Neighbors, the 2024 guy, being better than him, outshining him, and LSU not repeating what was a surprising season this year.
Yeah.
So.
I thought, and I'll own it, I thought Boutte was going to opt out, to be honest with you. And I tweeted that like last spring because he had an injury that kind of popped up there. I thought he was going to opt out. And then after week 1, after all that stuff, I thought he was going to opt out there too. And I think it's good that we don't not seeing that in the game as much as, in 2020, that COVID year, there's so many top guys that moved out. And that was my reasoning behind it, that he saw Jamar Chase opt out, sit out that entire season, go out, test, and be a top 5 pick. And I thought that he would kind of follow that same path as the other LSU guy. LSU needs to set up camp in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and get that guy Drake May out of there and tell him that, hey, we've already won the SEC West. We already beat Alabama. You come over here and you got Kayshon Boutte and Malik Neighbors. We're going to have you you're going to beat Caleb Williams. You're going to be the 101 in the draft thrown to these wide receivers of what we got set up here. And I'm just saying that Drake May, if you watch the show, that will probably be a money making move for you. And I know that his dad went to North Carolina, and I know that that's where his heart lies. But I think that that's a situation that's a guy that needs to look at maybe some better potential scenarios, unless they're able to make some waves in the transfer portal.
I think they're going to bring back Jaden Daniels. I
know that's the problem.
And so, like, I had this conversation with the group, and they were talking about it. They were like, hey, but if it comes back, what do we think of production? Who's the wide receiver 1, Malik Neighbors or Boutte? And I said, well, who's the quarterback? And someone said, does that matter? Yes, it does matter, because we saw a production dip from their wide receivers. Yes, they threw a lot. So they showed me some analytics, and you guys should never show me analytics because I don't give a shit. But they showed me analytics of them throwing the ball a bunch. Like, okay, that's great. But when I saw production, the production dip, because I don't think they're on targets. Yeah, they threw a lot of balls, but there was not a lot of on target balls. So when you watch what Jaden Daniels did, he struggled in that offense. And you saw every 3rd and long, you know what he did? He ran. Every 3rd and down and long, Jaden looked to run. And that's where Boutte really kind of stepped up the last 2 years before the injury, before all this stuff happened. Like, he was their go-to guy in that area. So I still question his upside, his ceiling, if Jaden is the quarterback. I just question it. And I think that's fair to say, in my opinion. Like, I think with what you guys have all mentioned too, I think we just got to know who that quarterback is. And if it's Daniels, he's going to get great download. But I will say, in the 24 class, wide receiver position's a mess after Marvin Harrison Jr. So there is some ability for him to move a little bit. All right, we're going to dive into games. We will talk about Deion going to Colorado. I promise. We're going to do that next. We're going to make Jeff put it first. We're going to get into it. I love Deion. I love, all those different coach moves that we got to get. We will talk about it, but we're going to go over impact and all that kind of stuff next week. So let's jump into the games. We're going to start with Christian. We're going to go Sportsbook Rundown.
Yeah, so the sportsbook rundown last week, Kevin and Jeff tied at 5-6. I was 4-7 on the season. Kevin and I are 63, 66, and 7, and Jeff has a 4-game lead, 67, 62, and 7. And this week we're going to be picking all of the college football awards. It's awards week, and so we're just going to go through all the awards, list the nominees, and go from there. So first one, Chuck Bednarik Award. Will Anderson, Ivan Pace, and Tuli Tuipulotu. Kevin, where are you going with this?
You guys know if I'm picking defensive awards, this is bad. I'm gonna go Anderson. I'll take Will.
Yeah, Jeff.
Yeah, I think that this is going to be Alabama's award like this year. I think that this is a lifetime achievement award for Will Anderson this year. I don't know that he, off his play alone this year, necessarily earned this. And I kind of feel like Jalen Carter probably should be winning this award or be nominated for it. But I think this is a career achievement. Will Anderson wins it.
Yeah, I think Tui Pelotu probably deserves it for how he played, but it's going to be Will Anderson without a doubt. Next one, Biletnikoff Award. Marvin Harrison Jr., Xavier Hutchinson from Iowa State, Jalen Hyatt from Tennessee. Marvin Harrison Jr. did go to Ohio State this last year, the Ohio State. Jeff, where are you going with this one?
The guy that probably should be in New York for representing Ohio State, I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to win this award. The name recognition. I think that he really powered that Ohio State offense, and he had the highlight plays and everything. I think this is kind of a runaway.
Yeah, from a statistical perspective, Hyatt has a case, and Hutchinson actually has a better case than Harrison Jr. I think Xavier Hutchinson was really good. We're going to talk about him a lot on this show, just warning you two even. But Harrison Jr. is winning this award. Kevin?
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and say Harrison Jr. I don't. This is why college football gets weird to me. Like, these guys are. If he doesn't win this award, it's bullcrap. That's just how I say that.
That's fair. The Groza Award. Jake Moody, Joshua Carty from Stanford. Jake Moody goes to Michigan. And then Christopher Dunn, NC State. This is the kicker award. Jake Moody is the only one I know, and so I'm going to take him. Kevin?
I'll take my boy Moody.
Makes sense.
Moody won the Groza last year, and there's no reason not to give it to him this year.
All right. That's better analysis than I had. Next one, the Maxwell Award. This is best quarterback, I believe, in the nation. C.J. Stroud from Ohio State, Hendon Hooker from Tennessee, and Caleb Williams from USC. Kevin, where are you going with this?
I'll go Caleb.
So this is just the best offensive player. That the Davey O'Brien is the quarterback award. So, right. And I'm going to go with Caleb Williams as well.
Yeah, man, it's tough because I think that he's going to get the others. I'm going to go Hooker. I'm going to go Hendon Hooker on this one. Davey O'Brien is next. It's Stroud, Caleb Williams, and Max Duggan, and that's why I went Hendon Hooker, because he's not even up for this one. Jeff, where are you going with this one?
I'm going to go upset here. Davey O'Brien was a TCU quarterback, so I'm going to go with TCU's guy, Max Duggan, win this award. I think that TCU is going to get a little bit of recognition, and this feels like a place to give it to him.
Okay. I'm going to go Caleb Williams on this one. Kevin?
I'm going to go Caleb to hedge my bet so I win one of these. That's what I'm going to do.
That's for business here. The Outland Trophy. Jeff, can you tell me what that is?
Outland Trophy is for the best exterior lineman. So there's the Remington Award that's for the best center. Outland Trophy is for the best lineman, usually most often a tackle.
Okay. I have a question then. Why is Kalijah Cansey on this list?
It can be defensive lineman too.
Okay.
It's offensive and defensive lineman.
Okay, that's a great wrinkle that we all need to know on the show. So first, Kalijah Cansey from Pittsburgh, Olu Oluwatimi from Michigan. It wasn't Olu. He's a guard, right? He's a center. And then Peter Skoronsky, the left tackle from Northwestern. Man, I'm gonna go Kalijah Cansey. He had a crazy productive year at defensive tackle, so that's where I'm gonna go. Kevin?
I'm gonna go Peter.
Yeah, it's just to give you some. So Jordan Davis won it last year. Alex Leatherwood the year before. Penny Sewell the year before. Quinnen Williams and Ed Oliver are the past winners. So it kind of is a split between offense and defense. I'm gonna go with Cansey as well from Pitt.
That's a first round player right there, by the way. The Thorpe Award. This goes to the best corner in the nation, I believe, judging from context clues. And the nominees, Travius Hodges-Tomlinson from TCU, Clark Phillips from Utah, and Devin Witherspoon from Illinois. Kevin, where are you going here?
I really like Travius Hodges. He's a lot of fun to watch, but I'm going to go Clark Phillips.
I'm going to go Devin Witherspoon. Devin Witherspoon played really well this year, so I'll go with him.
I'll make it fun. Hodges Tomlinson had a couple highlight plays towards the end, so I'll take him, and winner wins here, and so we'll take that. Next one, the Doak Walker Award, best running back in the nation. Chase Brown from Illinois, Blake Corum from Michigan, Bijan Robinson from Texas. Jeff, where are you going?
This is Bijan's award, I think. I think this is when he gets a little bit of recognition. And this actually, Doak Walker was an SMU player, so Texas award here.
All right. I'm going to go Blake Corum because they left him off the Heisman discussion, and I think he definitely deserved to be there. So I think they reward him for that. Kevin, where are you going?
I feel like a traitor, but I'm going to go Bijan.
I understand. All right. And then our Heisman picks. It's Caleb across the board, right?
Yes.
Yep.
We're not doing the ESPN thing where we hype it all up. And then the last thing we're picking, it's the Army-Navy weekend. Obviously, we could have previewed that game, but we chose to talk about more exciting things. Navy is 1.5-point favorites in this game. Kevin, where are you going with this
one? You can't say that, dude.
I don't think you can say this. Like I'm about to sing the Pledge of Allegiance right now. All right, so I'm gonna go. Just looking at the latest, like Army just blew out, UMass, Connecticut. Navy's always in there. I'm gonna go with the Army.
Okay, Jeff.
My brother is in the Army, and so I pull for Army. So Army.
Army's got an actual prospect this year. I don't know how that works for them though, but he's going to the NFL. I'm still taking Navy though. I think Navy's the better football team. I'll be watching this for what it's worth.
Oh yeah, because we're degenerates. But I do want to say, like, just this game. I don't know how do players enter the transfer portal? Someone in the comments tell me, because people from Army are entering the transfer portal. How does this happen? Like, do you just be like, I'm going to go play at Northwestern, but I'll come back in 2 years and go to I don't know. I think it's fascinating. Like I'm fascinated by it.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the last thing we're picking. So,
all right.
Let's sorry roll over to all the people in the service.
You just pulled a Tom Brady. All right, let's go over to prospect poker, play a little poker, do a little over-unders. We're going to go NFL over-unders this time. Rules of the game simple. We're going to play poker on the screen. We're going to talk about some over-unders we like. On the season right now, Jeff is 15-13. I'm 15-14. Christian's 14-13-1. I don't know how I have more, but I guess we do the math on this. We have an accountant. All right, Christian, what do you got? What's your over?
My over this week is Jalen Hurts over 230.5 passing yards. The Eagles are throwing the ball as well as anyone, and he just blew past that over in the first half this last week. So I think he continues it.
All right, so we've got a 7 of clubs, a 7 of hearts, and a 5 of diamonds showing. And then Christian had a 3 of spades come up. And Kevin, you had an extra one because week 1 you picked an extra one for some unknown reason. And so that one has hung with you. So
Jeff. That's great.
Yeah, you broke the rules, and you got an L, so that L hangs with you. So, so I'm going to go with DK Metcalf over 65.5 receiving yards. I think with Ken Walker injured, the Seahawks are really going to rely on that passing game a little bit more, and Carolina is a very willing opponent that will allow them to do some things through the air. So DK Metcalf over 65.5 receiving yards, and I have a 4 of hearts.
Yeah, I'm going to go Austin Eckler over 46.5 yards rushing. I think their matchup is good. I think that, when you look at the Dolphins did last week, they gave up 51 yards to Jordan Mason. Like, I think that there's areas and over 60 or 70 yards to CMC. Like, I think Austin Eckler can get this pretty easily. So give me the over 6.5 rushing yards.
A 4 of clubs. We're just really killing it.
It's not going well. My under this week is Tony Pollard under 71.5 rushing yards. I think that this feels like very much so a Zeke game, on top of the fact that the Texans have actually been pretty good against running backs over the last 4 weeks. I don't think that the Cowboys rushing attack is going to be super needed in this game either. So I'm going under.
We have a king of hearts, a king high. So I'm going to go under Dak Prescott, 240.5 yards, passing yards. They're playing the Texans this week. The Texans have actually been very good at quarterbacks, as we saw last week, and Deshaun Watson struggling in that game. But I think that the Cowboys are going to run the ball in this game, and they're probably going to pull away, and they're not going to need to rely on the passing game. So I'll go under 240.5 yards for Dak Prescott, and I've got a 3 of clubs. So I got absolutely nothing.
I'm going to go under Juju Smith-Schuster, 53.5 receiving yards. The targets just haven't been there. It's like the last 2 weeks, he's had 7 targets, 3 and 4 last in. And week 10, when he did play before he got injured in that week 11 game, he had 4 targets. Like, we just haven't seen the targets. He hasn't hit this number the last 3 games. And he's really been down outside of a couple big games that he's had. So give me that under 53.5.
2 of diamonds. So Christian won this game. So Christian's up 1, and Kevin and I split the first game. So we both have half. So whoever wins this, the last game we play blackjack. The way we play blackjack is we ask trivia with blackjack. You hit, you get a trivia question. You get it wrong, you get a bad outcome. You get it right, you get a good outcome. So Christian is going to throw up a 14. Kevin has a 19 showing, and I have a 12 showing. Okay, so I'm low. So does somebody have a question for me?
I do. It's an NFL question this week. What is Mike White's fantasy points per game ranking on the year?
QB 12.
No, QB 5. He's the QB 5 in points per game. Shout out Mike White.
Incredibly difficult question that you just.
I'm sorry.
Oh, you would have 21 too.
I would have 21 as well. I bust, so I go over. All right, Christian, I got a question for you.
Oh no.
So I mentioned that Caleb Williams is about 69 yards away from setting the USC single season passing yardage record. Who holds that record?
Matt Leinart.
It's Sam Darnold, actually. Matt Leinart is 5th. So Sam Darnold, 4,143 yards. And you bust, which means Kevin wins the show.
Congrats,
good
Kevin.
Question too. I'm gonna keep this question for next time because I never have questions, so that's good. Oh, I have a FaceTime. All right, let's talk about what are we going to talk about, boys? Yeah, it was a great season going down here, and I think it's been a lot of fun in terms of just the playoff. And now we're in it, and I think that when you're looking at the games, like me and Jeff might not be friends at the end of this. If we have a national championship where we're playing against each other, Ohio State, Michigan, it'll be interesting there. I think there's some fun storylines in the college football playoff, and I think one thing that we haven't mentioned, and we will talk about it, the transfer portal is going a little crazy right now. I don't think it's good to talk about transfer portal right now until we know locations, but that's changing the game, and it's going to change the game in terms of value. There's like 175 quarterbacks already in the portal, so it's going to be interesting to see where they go play. But there are so many just college football monumental shifts going to happen with that portal that we're seeing the real true first season of this. Like last year we saw it, but there's already 1,000 players in the portal, 1,000 players in the portal the first day. That's incredible. And we're going to start seeing these guys. I hope they find homes, because sometimes I heard some number that only 40% of players that go into portal find a new home the next year. So let's hope that they get those homes and they find a team to play for. But be aware that the portal is changing, and especially in Debbie. But I think the most important thing you could do is go look where the coordinators are changing jobs, and go find where the coordinators are going for fantasy production next year, because that's going to really matter, especially for the C2C and college side. So follow the coordinators, follow them, and see where they're at. We see coordinators make a big difference. Look what happened to Virginia's offense.
Well said.
All right. Good show, y'all. So we'll see you next week after, if Christian makes it through the Navy game after what he said. But next week we'll be back December 14th, 3 p.m. Eastern. Hit that like and subscribe button. Don't forget, let us know what you feel about the show. Hit that like and subscribe button. I'm Kevin Coleman.
I'm Jeff Bell.
And I'm Christian Williams, and this was the Football Guys College Football Show.